This class is for education, and we won't talk about specific investments or specific situations because every situation is different. Plus, this class is for a wide variety of potential new investors. Hello, and welcome to another exciting, informative financial wellness session. Let's get started. I'm Tanya Rapley. Welcome to a new series from State Farm and Let's Start Today. This is where you'll find the tools, support, and education you need to take control of your finances today and reach your goals for tomorrow. These helpful courses are inspired by an ever-evolving learning lab known as Nextdoor State Farm. And speaking of Nextdoor, I'm here today with Dan, who is a financial coach at Nextdoor State Farm, and Earl, who's a State Farm agent. Thank you guys for joining me.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So today's session is called Just the Facts, Investing. Are you guys ready to talk about some eye-opening stuff?
Absolutely. We're ready to go.
Let's do it.
Okay, so before we dig in, I wanted to go over what we're going to discuss. And today we'll be discussing determining if you are ready to begin investing, why it's important to start early, establishing risk versus reward, identifying your time horizon and how that factors into your investment strategy, then the common investments you should consider, the diversification of your portfolio, and building that portfolio. You guys ready to dig in?
Yes, we
Got
are.
a lot to do.
All right, so let's start with that question that everybody has. When am I ready to start investing, and am I ready to begin investing?
I think it's a great question. When I run into it, there's a lot of kind of fear around investing. And I understand that. And so we'll kind of talk through some of that stuff, but there's also the, am I ready to start investing? And I think the big two things for me about whether you're ready to start investing is having that emergency fund and having your debt managed. Doesn't necessarily mean having all of your debt paid off, but it means having it managed.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you're not necessarily talking about all your debt, and you're not necessarily talking about paying it all off. You just want to get to a point where you can pay off the unproductive part or the counterproductive parts of your debt, like your high credit card debt and things like that, and then just manage the rest of it within your budget. I think you'll be okay.
Absolutely.
I think unproductive is a good word for it, where it's things that are really high interest, like credit cards, maybe private loans or collections, things like that, where you honestly may be paying more in interest than you would earn on an investment anyway.
Yeah, and it's counterproductive.
Yeah, so get that paid off. If you have things like a mortgage or a student loan, I think that's okay. You got to be making your payments.
Got to be making those payments all along, but you want to get really down to the point where you are getting your financial house in order. You're getting rid of the debt, and you get rid of some spending habits and things like that. And when you get to that point, you can really focus on what you're trying to do from an investment standpoint, and it actually gives you a better chance of having success.
Absolutely, and I say, make sure you're up to date on all of your finances as well. Your investment portfolio is not there to save you now, it's there to help you down the line. And I think some people make the mistake of saying, okay, well, while I don't have my entire financial house together, I've started investing and that's good enough. And no, it's not good enough, because you want to make sure you're making the right decisions today and tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why I think the emergencies fund is so important, right? A lot of people, hey, maybe I have my debt in order, I'll start investing. Well, what happens if an emergency comes up, right? What if we have to go back into that unproductive debt? Or what if we need to sell our investments at an inopportune time because of that, emergency that happened? So I think part of that house in order is having that kind of fund set aside for, oh no, the wheels fell off my car, but I can handle that.
Right. I get this question all the time about how much do I need in terms of emergency funds. Well, that's kind of up to you, but a rule of thumb would be 6 to 9 months of essential emergency funds so that you can, stay alive, so to speak, in terms of until you can get your house back in order. So I would say 6 to 9 months of essential emergency funds to be able to meet your requirements there.
Yeah, so it looks like, your investments are an important part of your financial puzzle, per se, but you want to make sure that you have all the pieces fitting together, and some of those pieces need to be put together before you begin investing. So if you're trying to decide if you're ready to begin investing, look at the other components of your financial puzzle and make sure you have those.
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense to start investing before you have your house in order. It just doesn't, because it's not leading to your best effort in terms of making an an investing decision or commitment.
Exactly. So investments are important, but you want to make sure you have your bases covered before you start investing. Okay, so I think we have a better understanding of whether or not we're ready to begin investing. Let's have a look at what we've learned. All right, so moving into why it's important to start now, or to start as soon as you have your financial house in order. What are the benefits of starting early? Or starting now, we should say.
I mean, this is going to sound silly, but you've started, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot
Which
of
is the
fear
hardest
around
part
this,
a lot of times.
and there's a lot of, well, I'll wait until or I'll build up a little bit, or I'll do this, or I'll do that. So we're going to talk, I think, a lot about compound interest, which is this idea that, you know, investments make interest, then there's interest on the old interest.
Yeah, let's go ahead and start that now. Let's go ahead and dig into compound interest.
Yeah, so compound interest is really just interest on old interest. So let's say in a hypothetical example, you put away $1,000 and you get 10%, you're gonna get $100 in growth, right? That next time you get 10%, you're gonna get $110 because you'll get the same 100 and then 10 on the old 100. Then you'll get 121. So as that goes on year after year after year, it really starts to add up, which is why you want to start.
Yeah, I think it was Albert Einstein who said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world.
Yeah.
And he or she who knows that earns this interest, and he or she who doesn't know it, they end up paying it. So you end up, like Dan said, with this compounding on top of your money, and you end up being far, far ahead in terms of what your investments are going to produce. So this compound interest is very, very important in terms of people learning it. But I think one of the things that causes people not to get started is because they think they got to know everything. They got to, you know, it's one of the hardest hurdles to achieve in terms of just getting started. So one of the best ways to do that is just to, you know, maybe work with like-minded people who want to invest and have the same interests. And another way maybe is to bring somebody in that's gonna help you and you can share your ideas with. Just any way you can to get started and get over that major hurdle of just getting started.
Yeah, oftentimes when I'm working with people or I'm talking to them, I say, you know, well, you're spending your money in other ways and the money isn't working for you. So you're fearful of investing, but you're not giving your money a chance to work for you. So why not go ahead and take that chance?
You know, I'm a big proponent of, I think it's more the fear than it is necessarily the amount of money. Start with a few dollars, right? Something that you're okay. Hey, it was either, you know, buying lunch out or it was using it for this. Start with $10, that's okay. Get comfortable with it, realize that, yeah, there's ups, downs, there's things you need to learn, but you don't have to have every single piece of knowledge to really get moving.
Right, right. And it's important that, just like you said, you don't have to start with a lot of money. You don't have to start with a lot of education. Just start. Just learn one little thing, and maybe that will allow you to learn another. So it's just important to pick up your foot, take a step, take another step, and before long, you're walking and running and stuff like that. So just get involved.
The thing I also loved, I want to just go back a second. I love that Albert Einstein quote because it ties in so perfectly to the last chapter. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. Well, guess what? That's credit card debt.
You don't want to be the one. You don't want to be the one who's paying it.
Right, but that's credit card debt, right?
Yeah,
That's why we talk about getting that handled ahead of time.
Getting rid of it, yeah, because then you're paying credit card debt, but you're earning interest, but you're really paying credit card debt.
And that's why I go back to education, because if people knew that, everybody would want to be earning more and doing a better job and doing it more efficiently. So it gets back to education, and that Albert Einstein quote is it's probably an eighth or ninth wonder of the world too, in terms of just realizing that. Okay.
So I think that, you know, we could say basically that it's important to start now because when you start investing your money, it gives you the opportunity to make more money on your money.
That's
Absolutely.
true.
So now we know that you want to start investing now, but there are also benefits to starting early. So someone who starts early has an advantage. What are some of the advantages of starting early when it comes to investing?
I mean, it's kind of goes back to that compound interest, right? We talked about, and that's powerful, but really it is more powerful the longer you have, which is not to say You know, hey, if you're in a situation, you're a little older, you're starting a little later, that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's back to the starting as soon as you can, whether that's now when you're 22, whether that's now when you're 52, whether that's now when you're 82. The sooner you can start, the more years that has to compound, the faster, the stronger, the quicker that's going to grow. And, you know, as scary as this can be, most people who are pretty young right now should have over $1 million when they retire. And that seems impossible until you start to look at compound interest and you realize that's really not that much when it comes to saving now. But if you're trying to do that at 60, it's going to be quite a bit harder. It's doable, but it's harder.
Yeah, you know, Dan and Earl, I've never sat and said, you know, I wish I would have bought those shoes when I was 20. I never have said that.
That's
but
fair.
I have said, I wish I would have started investing when I was 20, especially knowing what I know now.
Yeah, because the younger you are, the more you can achieve, and the more of the ups and the downs that you can handle. Okay, because if you start right, and Dan couldn't be more right in terms of, or more correct in terms of this, getting back to this compound interest about Albert Einstein, but the ups and the downs and the longevity of starting early will allow you to defeat a lot of the things that's going to happen to you.
Yeah,
and so it's important that they start early.
Absolutely, yeah. So starting early, that's one of the most important factors. And even if you haven't started early, maybe you can encourage someone else in your life to start early, because it really is important in allowing your money to work for you and take advantage of compound interest.
Well, and now is earlier than later, right? So whether you don't feel like you're
earlier
starting,
than later.
well, you know, but
that's true.
Now is always
but
earlier
that's
than
what I'm
later.
saying. Like, even if you don't feel like you're early, if you feel like you're late, still earlier now than it will be a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now.
I like that philosophy.
Yeah, I do too.
I like
still
that. I'm
thinking
adopting
about
that. Now is earlier than later.
Now is earlier than later.
So we can all agree that starting early is essential to growing your investment portfolio.
Yes.
Let's have a look at what we've learned. So we kind of touched on risk and in that last section, but let's really get into risk versus reward, because that's what makes it all possible, right? You're taking a risk to earn a reward. So let me hear your opinions on helping customers analyze the risk versus the reward when it comes to their investment strategy.
There's a lot of tools that will help people, learn how to take the risk or be more comfortable with taking the risk. But, most customers, they just focus on the risk part. They can only see themselves losing. And you may have experienced that too.
Yeah, it's because I think we hear it a lot in the news. There's always, the Dow did this. We're always talking about what happened, what people lost, instead of the rewards. You don't really talk about the success stories of people who've invested in the market.
Yeah.
Well, I also want to step back and just make sure people understand, because, I don't know that everybody knows this, that risk and reward also move together.
Yes.
Right? You can take a lot of risk, and with that comes more reward, or you can take, if you're not comfortable with that, you can take less risk, but with it'll come a little bit less reward. They're just going to move together, right? If there was something very high return that was very low risk, we wouldn't be here. We'd be on our island paradise somewhere, right?
Right.
But I think the risk is really highly publicized, but people don't really think about it over the long term.
And I think that's what's scary to people. When we think about fear when it comes to investing, it's the risk, because people aren't afraid of making more money.
Yeah.
They're afraid of losing their money and making the wrong decisions.
Yeah, and I think people have to be careful in terms of understanding that, you got risk versus reward, but you also got risk tolerance. Now, risk tolerance is a situation where you could, the market, what risk are you willing to take here? Because the market can go up, the market can go down, your investments can go up, your investments can go down. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But now a person will say, okay, well, I don't know that I really want to take this type of risk. What is my risk tolerance? Well, everybody's is different. So you may want to start with just looking at a simple thing like balancing your risk against the reward. Don't be too far out here. I'll just, like Dan said, if you want to be out here and get this great reward, then you got to take more risk. Well, you may not be comfortable with that. Your risk tolerance may not allow you to reach out that far.
Absolutely.
So just balance it in terms of until you feel more comfortable in terms of what you can do.
Absolutely. And Dan, I think, you probably work with people and helping them identify their different risk profiles, right?
Yeah.
When you're working with clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody's going to have a little bit of a different feeling about risk. So we kind of break it into three. There's conservative, which is, hey, I don't like to see the ups and downs. I'm okay, kind of that slow and steady. I don't want to take a lot of risk, but that's okay if I don't get quite as much return. And then on the other side, there's the aggressive, right? I am okay with big up and down as long as I kind of am going as fast as I can where I want to go.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's kind of a moderate, which is a little blend of those two. I want to see some return, I want to see some growth, but I know that is going to come with some ups and downs as we go. And obviously those are three, but it's a spectrum, right? Some people are going to fall somewhere in between the first two, the second two. It's going to be, where do you fit in kind of those three in general?
And we're going to dig into the portfolio, but you can adjust that over time.
Yes.
So just because you're aggressive right now doesn't mean you have to remain aggressive through the duration of your investment history.
100%.
Right, and that in the time horizon is the time you have to invest is going to dictate a lot of that. But what you don't want to find yourself doing is having to be aggressive, because now you waited, and you haven't done what you need to do, and now you're trying to get it all at one time. That's a very bad situation to be in. So you want to be really careful with how you're choosing that. You can lean a little bit towards the middle or lean a little bit towards the aggressive, but you just want to be really careful that you're not too far out there.
We all have different personalities. We all have different risk tolerances, and it's important to identify which one works out best for you in your situation. Let's have a look at what we've learned. So we've touched on time horizon. We've stated that I've heard that word a few times, but let's dig into what someone's time horizon is and how that applies to their investing strategy.
Yeah, I mean, so your time horizon is really, when do you need the money, right? If you need the money in 3 years, your time horizon is 3 years. If you need it in 10 years, it's in 10 years. If you need it in 30 years, it's 30 years. And this really comes down to, we talked a lot about risk tolerance. I think we covered that well on, that's how you feel about risk.
Right.
How much risk can you take, right? If you need your
Within
money,
this window.
if you need your money in 2 years, even if you're really aggressive, you maybe shouldn't be that aggressive. If you need it in 30 years, even if you feel conservative, you can probably weather a few more ups and downs, like Earl mentioned.
Yeah, if you're in your 20s, you could do a whole lot more in terms of risk. But if you're, just like Dan was saying, in that time capacity, if you're in your 50s, late 50s, early 60s, and you want to retire at 65, that's not a big window that you have to compress everything into. You got a lot to think about in that window. So this time horizon is really, just like he said, the capacity to get what you want to do inside of that window. And it's really important that you understand what that is so that you can have an opportunity to make the right types of decisions inside that time horizon.
Yeah, when we say time horizon, I can't help but think about, we're on this long stretch of road and we're looking at the sunset and we're driving to it in a convertible. And it's like, how much road do you have until you reach your sunset?
I agree, but I think sometimes people start thinking about this always with age, right? You're about to retire, you're about to, it's not.
I'm not, though.
Well,
I'm not.
It's not just age, though, right? It's length of time until your goal.
Yeah.
So if you have a kid who's 1 year old and you're starting to save for their college, you can take a lot of ups and downs in hopes that their college fund grows.
Yeah.
If your kid is 1 year away from college,
Right.
and you've got it really aggressively invested and something happens, it's a pretty awkward conversation to talk to them about having a gap year so your investments can grow again.
And so, Dan, I like how you said, it applies to a variety of situations. It's not just about retirement. It's about those financial goals that are important to you. But also, as Earl said, sometimes you have to get creative along the way. And it's not just about having those investments. It's like, okay, what else are we going to do to supplement this time that we might have lost?
Yes.
Yep.
Because we did not start early.
Right. And again, that's for everything. There's retirement, there's kids sending to college, down payment, right? If you're 10 years away, maybe investing. If you're 2 years away, maybe not. So there's a lot of pieces there. And I think the action item here is sit down, list out your goals, and then kind of make a little bit of a matrix, right?
Yeah.
How long do I have? How much risk am I comfortable with? And where do those two things intersect?
Where do they meet? Yeah. Time horizon is important, and I'm glad that we have a better understanding of how that factors into our investment strategy. Let's have a look at what we've learned. All right, so moving on, common investments. We've spoken about, starting now, starting early, identifying your time capacity, your time horizon. Now, what are we going to invest in? What are the common investments that people should be looking into?
Well, there are different asset classes. You got, you got cash, and you got cash equivalents. These would be like your savings accounts and bank accounts, money markets, different types of things like that. You got bonds. You want to think of bonds like you think of a loan. And you got equities, or better known as stocks, or stocks better known as equities. And so all of these are going to be, be different asset classes that you can invest in.
So we have stocks and we have bonds. Can you just explain simply what those are?
Absolutely. So think of a bond like a loan. Right? You take in loans, like I get my mortgage and I maybe get my car loan. This is just the opposite. You're loaning out money to a company or a government or maybe a city, and they are paying you back generally a fixed amount, a fixed interest rate. So these are also called fixed income because of that.
Okay.
And then at the end of the bond, they'll return the money you originally lent them with that final interest payment. Stocks are ownership in a company. So that's why they're also called equity. There's like ownership in your house is called your equity. Ownership in a company is called equity. So you own a very, very small percent of a company. You can kind of make money two ways here. One, the company can be worth more. And if so, your stock may go up in value. Mm-hmm. Or they can pay you what's called a dividend. So small company like a pizza shop, right? They are trying to make money, pay their drivers and order new ingredients and market. At the end, if they have money left over, the owner uses that to pay their bills. Big companies are no different. If a big company makes $30 billion and they take $20 billion of it to market and come up with a recipe and build a new plant, and there's some money left over, at the end, they will give it to their owners, which are stockholders. So you'll get a dividend. A couple of cents, maybe $1, who knows, but they'll pay you some back.
I think that's a great example.
Yes, and of course, stocks are, just like Dan said, they're on the other end of that. And, again, we're back to time horizon again, because it depends on what you're trying to do, depending on the asset class that you might invest in. But if you are going to be in bonds, you got to, they come in, they come in the form of government bonds. They come in the form of municipals, which is meaning that some municipality is doing some project like a city or, a county or something like schools. Or you might have a corporate bond, which corporations use to buy different things, to build buildings, to do different things with that money. And so it's important to understand that these earn interest on that money.
Got you. So, Dan, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
Someone
please.
walks into your office, they say, my coworker was talking to me about stocks and bonds. Which one should I look into?
I think Earl's totally right. What's your risk tolerance? What's your time horizon? What do you need? And to be honest with you, the thing I just love that he mentioned is there's also different risk profiles within these.
Yeah.
Right? So I think this is a great example and a great place to talk about why risk and return move together. Let's say I have a very small company, right? And I want to borrow money. I offer you a bond. The chance that I go out of business is pretty high, right? So if I offer you 2%, and the government's offering you 2%, and you're much more confident the government's going to pay you back, you're not going to give me any money. So what if I say I'll give you 6%? Well, then what if you find out a much bigger company is giving you 6%? Again, you're going to be like, I'm not going to give you that money.
Yeah.
I'm much more comfortable that big company is going to pay me back.
Yeah.
Then what if I say, okay, I'll give you 8%? Then suddenly,
Becomes attractive.
Well, maybe, maybe not. That's where your risk profile, your time horizon starts to make you think about, am I okay with that slow and steady and consistent, or am I willing to take this chance for more return?
Yeah, and so basically what Dan is saying is the more risky his company is in terms of issuing that bond, to induce me and to entice me to take it, he's got to offer me a bigger return. Otherwise, I'm not going to take the risk.
So high level overview. A stock is,
The riskiest.
yes, and then the bonds are,
The bonds are in the middle, and
the
then
middle.
your cash equivalents, your savings accounts, your cash is going to be the safest.
there are a variety of investment vehicles available to you, and it's important to understand which one works best for you and your future goals. Let's have a look at what we've learned. All right, so next we're moving into diversification. So we've hinted at this, but let's really dig in. At the basic level, what is diversification?
It's not putting all of your eggs in one basket. That's as simple as it gets, right? If you have all of your money in an investment and that investment doesn't do well, you don't do well. The market, kind of like using a yo-yo while walking upstairs, individual companies will do well, individual companies will do poorly, but the whole market will do better. And so it may make sense for us to have a little bit of that whole thing.
Yeah. And Dan says just perfectly, it's not putting all of your eggs in one basket. As a result, you're not putting all of your money into one stock. Diversification suggests that you have multiple stocks, that multiple types of stocks, or multiple different things. So the idea is not to put all your eggs in one basket, because you know what your mama said, right? The basket could what? Tip
Break.
over and break.
Yeah.
And then all your eggs are broken, right? So what you want to do, the whole idea with the strategy is to put yourself in a situation where if that basket tips over, maybe it only breaks one egg, right? This stock goes down, these others stay where they are or go up,
Because
you don't
they-
lose
yeah,
everything.
because
You
of
are
another basket.
diversified.
I think there's actually two levels of this, right? So we started talking about not putting all your eggs in one basket, of don't own just one stock, own multiple different stocks. And that's maybe to your analogy of owning 4 different types of cars.
Yes.
There's a little bit different. But there's also, you want diversification maybe between different assets.
Absolutely, Dan, yeah.
So you don't want just stocks, maybe you also want bonds. So it's not just different stocks, it's also different types of assets.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And diversity is important. Diversity in your investment portfolio, it can actually protect you from some of the risk that you're concerned
Big
with.
time. That's what it's designed to do.
And I think the obvious question though becomes, how do we get it?
Yeah.
Right? It sounds so good. We're like, cool, we
Yeah, I
want
want more.
diversification. Now what? So I think it makes sense for us to talk a little bit about what's called mutual funds or ETFs, right? An individual stock, not all of them, but they can cost $1,000. If I have $500 to invest, how am I going to get diversification? Right? I might only have one company, or I might have a couple of them, but I won't have a lot.
So we don't want to put all those eggs in one basket. We want to diversify our portfolios. Let's have a look at what we learned. So that's diversification. Now we're building a portfolio, right?
Yep.
Because that's what all of this is. It fits
Yep.
into our portfolio. So actually, let's dial it back. The basics. What is a portfolio?
Absolutely. An investment portfolio is just a collection of all your investments. So you might have some stocks, some bonds, some mutual funds, some ETFs. All of that together is your portfolio that you have hopefully built by looking at your risk tolerance, your time horizon, your diversification needs, all those things we've talked about kind of come together in one nice pot, basically.
Yeah, so it's your investment portfolio.
It's your investment portfolio. It's all your investments together.
in one place.
Yep, and you get these investments and get them together, and lo and behold, things changes within your life, within some entity or whatever, and you have to constantly focus on them. You can't just build them and set them there and just leave them. You gotta go and make sure that they are doing what you need. They're helping you accomplish your goals, and they're acting as your whole, like they said, a whole portfolio in terms of what you're trying to do.
Yes, absolutely. So for me, building a portfolio is kind of like ordering off a menu, right? So if you go buy some stock, you're getting into something that's high risk, right? So it's kind of like going to a menu and saying, hey, I want this thing. So maybe that's yogurt. But if you go in and you say, I want yogurt, they're gonna give it to you. And then you say, I want oatmeal, they're gonna give it to you. And then you say, I want buffalo wings, and they're gonna give it to you. And then you say, So if you kind of order a bunch of different things that don't make sense together, they don't know any better, right? You went in and you asked for each thing individually. They're just gonna give it to you, let you have that, even if it's kind of nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is nasty. Yeah. What you,
Now you have indigestion and everything else.
I wouldn't eat that.
Yes. So building your portfolio is going in and saying, hey, yogurt's great, oatmeal's great, whatever's great, but I need to build myself a meal.
Yes.
I want to get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, so that I'm really comfortable with what I'm getting. And then to the point we've made earlier, and Earl made earlier, is as you age and as your goals change, what you want to eat is going to change.
Yeah.
So you're going to change your portfolio to kind of match your appetite at the time.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that example. Is you're creating a complementary menu so that all the items complement each other.
Yep, exactly. And of course you can look at it from a pie chart standpoint, which is pie, I guess, leading into what you were talking about.
Not as, exciting as buffalo wings and yogurt.
Banana pudding and all that kind of stuff. You can have some. I'm preferably on cake, but anyway, I'm building my portfolio, and we're not talking about it today, but there could be some real estate in there, whatever it is that makes up my menu, what I have in terms of that I'm going to be working from and investing from. That's my portfolio that I built. Now I got to manage it. I can't just leave it there and let it sit and not pay attention to it. I got to make sure that this thing is not going to be static. It's going to be dynamic. It's always going to be changing. There's always changing going on. So I got to make sure that I'm paying attention to it so that I can have it do the best job that I can in reaching my goals.
And what I love about that pie chart analogy is that's what you're going to see out in the world, right? If you go look at your retirement or some other portfolio you may have, they're likely going to show you a pie chart, and it's going to have all these pieces. And hopefully now, after talking about this, you'll understand, oh, this says fixed income. That means bonds. This says equities. That means stock. And you can start to think about, is this the meal I want to eat? Or do I maybe need to return those buffalo wings and get something a little different?
Absolutely. So it's important to build a portfolio that is complementary so that everything works together and works for you instead of against you and your financial goals. I think that we have a better understanding of how to build a proper investment portfolio that works for us, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's have a look at what we've learned. So there are a variety of ways that people can invest, and there are a variety of options available to them.
Yes.
We could continue to talk about this, but I think we've covered really good ground here and given people a good understanding of the different investment options available to them. Dan, Earl, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been great.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Make sure to explore all of our tools, support, and education. And don't forget to check out all of our other courses. See you soon.